Hello and welcome to the Devoted Outdoorsman Podcast. Hey guys, before we get into the podcast, I want to let you guys know that this episode of the Devoted Outdoorsman Podcast is being brought to you by Ethics Archery. If you need some badass arrow components for your new badass arrow build, you need to hit up Haas over at Ethics, man. He knows everything and he will get you dialed in. Some people from the Working Class Bowhunter podcast, they call him the Arrow Doctor. So you guys need to hit up Haas and go to the Arrow Doctor to get you an arrow prescription today. So check him out at ethicsarchery.com. What is up, guys? I hope you guys had an awesome week and you're ready for this week's episode of the Devoted Outdoorsman Podcast. I am so jacked. Like, this cold front came through Oklahoma this weekend, and this is Saturday morning, and it's just the temperatures, everything's real crisp. I'm just getting so excited for October 1st, which my boss did tell me I can take the day off. So I'm pretty excited about that, and I'm ready to get out there in the woods. Well, this week on the podcast, we're going to talk with Haas from Ethics Archery. He went on a pretty amazing hunt out in Colorado, and he's here to tell us a little bit about it today. So with all that being said, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get us into this week's podcast. I hope you enjoy.
Hello, Podcast Nation. I hope you guys are having an awesome September. I hope you guys are getting ready for steer seasons and hunting seasons opening up across the country. I know I have 2 more weeks here in Oklahoma before archery season opens up, and I am stoked. But our buddy Haas from Ethics Archery has gotten a little bit of a head start on us. He was out in Colorado on an elk hunt, and I think he's going to tell us a little bit about the experience and everything that went down. So, Haas, how has your September been going so far?
Oh, man, September's been awesome so far. So, yeah, we planned on doing an elk hunt. Been planning it for a little over a year now, and it was actually myself and one of my pro staff guys, Steve Olivaros, out of Hawaii. And he flew down from Hawaii. I picked him up in Colorado there, and we went and spent 5 days up in the mountains with an outfitter out there that we kind of made friends with. He invited us out to come out and try our hand at some elk hunting. It was definitely a heck of an experience, man, let me tell you. To say the least. It started off a little rough. It started off with the elk hunt. It was slow, man. It was hot, real hot. I guess they've been experiencing one of the worst droughts since like 1972. And Travis Kruckenberg Outfitting, TKO Outdoors, they invited us down, and it started last Monday. We get there Sunday night, and it's kind of a heck of a story, man. So started off Sunday night when we got there, late afternoon, got all set up. Started off a little rough. We get up over to the cabin there where we're going to be hunting out of, and get everything all set up upstairs, come down. Elk hunting is going to be rough on anybody. Physical fitness is definitely something that can't be ignored for sure. I knew this going into it, and I'm already a big guy, as most of you guys know if you follow me on social media at all or have seen me at all. I come downstairs first afternoon, kind of getting set up, getting ready to have dinner and go over a game plan for the start of the week, and I missed the bottom step coming down and break my big toe. The night before the hunt even starts.
So before you even get out in the woods after these elk, you broke your toe.
Snapped it in half the night before.
God.
Oh yeah. So odds are stacking up. I'm already a big dude, and up in the high elevation. I'm from Arizona, so I'm not used to high elevation. Yeah, I do travel a lot, but I'm not doing extreme physical activity up in those altitudes. So this is definitely something that's going to be kind of a big challenge for me. So to kind of give you a little bit of a premise on what this elk hunt was to me before we actually showed up. So you've got some people, without naming any names, in this industry, and don't get me wrong, these people are doing awesome things in the industry, right? But when it comes to the elk woods, you know, if you're not some kind of like a Roman or Greek god of fitness, they make you feel without intention that you don't belong in the elk woods. You know, and I think it's wrong. And again, I don't think the intention is that, but that's the way it comes off to a lot of people. And though physical fitness and being able to run miles and run up mountains and stuff like that is definitely a major benefit when it comes to elk hunting, especially in terrain like the Rocky Mountains. It's very important, but it's not the only factor. And for me, I wanted to be able to show people, if you just get off the couch and you give it everything you got, it's going to suck. Okay? It's going to hurt. There's going to be pain involved. You're going to be asking yourself 1,000 times on the mountain, what am I doing here? But if you really put your mind to it and you can work through it, I think that, you know, you can get out there and get it done. And that's kind of what it was important for me. You know, it's me having my injuries that I have had before and putting on the weight and everything caused from those injuries. I wasn't really sure if I'd ever be able to do this kind of hunt, you know, and I worked hard at it and I put my mind to it, and that's really what it took. And, you know, we put a little over 60 miles on our boots in 5 days in extreme conditions as far as, you know, the Colorado Rockies. Extreme conditions for guys, especially like me, right? Some of these other guys that are going to the Alps and some other crazy stuff in places like Alaska or whatever may not be as extreme, but this is about as extreme as it gets without going up into the sheep woods, you know what I'm saying, into sheep territory. And for me, that was the biggest thing, is to show people, just get out there, do it, put your mind to it, fight through the pain, fight through it. And if you do that, good things can happen. And we got lucky, okay? We persevered, and maybe not after the exact game animal we were after, but it definitely turned out to be an awesome experience. So kind of start off on day one, you know, here I am, big dude, getting ready to go out and do something very extreme. I snap a toe, right? So we go ahead and set the toe as best we can. I tape it up. We get out that first morning. And, you know, the elk, it was hot. All 5 days it was super hot, and the elk just weren't talking. And day one was pretty slow. We saw elk, obviously from glassing knobs, and you know, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 yards away with our spotting scopes and binoculars, and we just kind of watched them to kind of figure out where they were going, travel routes, that kind of thing. Figure out when they were moving, morning, noon, and night. We spent all day out there. While we were out there on day one, Travis had warned me beforehand that they had a lot of bears and everything up there. And so one of my guides, Jesse was with me the whole time we were there. Him and I kind of set off on our own that first morning, and Steve went out on his own. We were waiting for another guide to come in that evening. So Steve's got a lot of experience, so especially with elk even. So he kind of had an idea on what he was doing. He just needed to be pointed in the right direction. He went off, and Jesse and I went up to the glassing knob and we started looking around, and no kidding, first morning we get there, sun's just coming up, and we get a phone call from one of the landowners that they have access to some private land that's about 20 minutes away. And it's a little sliver of land that's in between a bunch of other private properties, but they do a lot of deer hunting over there. Well, we get a call as the landowner is going into town, and he texts us and he says, "Hey, there's a 5x5 bull bedded down right in the center of my piece of property. Go get him." So we pack up, jump in a truck, and we haul butt. We get over there. And this is first morning, first couple minutes of light. So I'm thinking, wow, this is going to turn out pretty intense, right? So we get him come up over the hill, and we're just getting ready to drop down to where you can see across this piece of land, try to figure out where he's at. And there's this bull standing 40 yards from the truck looking at us. So obviously my heart starts pumping. I'm like, oh crap, this is going to happen right here. And he must have been, he was really spooked when we got there. I think the people just driving through, going into town, must have seen him and was stopping and staring at him and just kind of got him spooked. And he ran up over top of the hill, so we went, turned around, came back. And now all of this, from when we saw him to when we turned around and came back, was maybe 100 yards total of driving, right? We get out of the truck, and we come up over the hill to where we should be able to see. And you can see about a good mile and a half. And it's open country down in the bottom. There's no trees, no nothing. It's just grass. And the nearest tree line's got to be close to 3/4 to a mile away. Just guessing. By the time we get to the top of that hill, this thing disappeared. I mean, was gone. No trace of him. We sat there for 20 minutes, Glass, could not find him. Now I know, and I've been told, and I've heard, and I've seen from back home in Arizona, that elk can cover some ground pretty quick, but that's ridiculous. This thing turned into a ghost. I don't know how he made it that far in such a short period of time, because the only place he could have gone was the trees, and he was gone. So that kind of gave me a first taste, is like, wow, these things can move, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was crazy. So we finished out the day, no other elk, no nothing. We go back to the glassing knob, and we're watching the elk way off in the distance, and we're just kind of trying to pattern these things while we're there and see what they're doing. And so we take the chance, and this whole time we're going around in the woods and we're getting up to this glassing knob, there is bear sign everywhere. I mean, fresh bear scat, all the trees in a few certain areas where there's some water and there's a wallow is just ate up with bear claws all over the trees. I mean, these things are clawed up. I've never seen so much bear sign in my life. Never hunted bears, but I've been in the bear woods before, and I've just never seen that much. So I decide, hey, let's run into town, and I go buy a bear tag. Now, it's a rifle tag, and Travis over there at TKO wanted me to, he had mentioned, hey, try and get a bear tag if you guys can, and we'll bring a rifle while we're glassing and stuff, so if one does step out, we can do it, because he's also a sheep farmer. So he's been experiencing quite a bit of loss with his sheep, and then also with guiding and stuff like that, the elk calves and the deer and stuff like that have taken a pretty big impact with these bears, so they want to take as many as they can. So we go into town, we buy a rifle tag. Now, me personally, I'm not putting anybody down by any means. I don't like hunting with a rifle. I've never taken a big game animal with a rifle, and I didn't really want to start now, but, he'd invited us out to come out, and he was going to put us on some elk, and, with him being, a sheep farmer and stuff like that, we wanted to help. And if taking a bear was going to help him, then I was willing to do it. And, we get through the next 3 or 4 days, and the following morning, we actually get down into these Quakies off the top of this big, big mountain. I mean, it's the biggest hike I've ever done. I couldn't even tell you exactly how many miles it was, but it was a lot. I was hurting pretty bad, but we get down into some of the nastiest, steepest stuff I would never even consider going down being my physical condition. But we get down in there, we take our time, and we make it. And this is the only really encounter that I had with elk while I was there, and we had about a 15, maybe 20-minute conversation with 2 bulls. Now, these bulls were maybe 60 to 80 yards away from us, and we had them bugling back and forth for about 20 minutes, but we got set up, but we just couldn't get them to step out in the open and take a shot. And they just turned around and walked away. And that was really the only encounter for elk that we had. So, I mean, it was tough. But here we are on the last day, and I'll regress. I'll go back to the second to the last day, Thursday. We're out there and we're glassing, and we see this bear, and it's straight across from us, across a canyon, a big canyon, and he's over in a wallow that they know where it's at, because this stuff, all these mountainsides are plumb full of, you either got quakies or the aspens. They call them quakies there. And everything else is completely covered in oak brush. And it is thick. It's hard to see anything. But we spot this bear across the canyon, and I get down, I get a rifle on him. He's about 700 yards away. And I just couldn't get the crosshairs on him fast enough before he walked into the oak brush, and we lost him. But he was a big one. When you can spot a bear with your naked eye from 700 miles away, or 700 yards away, that's a big bear. Big black bear.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Absolutely.
So here's where it gets interesting. We're on the last day, and we make about a 3 or 4 mile hike, I guess. Maybe a little less than that. We go down to this wallow that they know of. We get there, and I'm filming everything, and we see all the bear sign and everything by this wallow, and we're looking for elk sign. There's really nothing too fresh. We look up on this trail that they had hand cut. It's basically a game trail that they created, and the game started really using it heavily. It goes all the way and wraps around into a bowl that's adjacent to where you start on the other side of the canyon. And we look up on this big bench, and there's 2 bulls and a cow up there. So we decide, hey, let's get after it. So, by this time my legs are smoked, man. I'm in a lot of pain, but I'm pushing through it. And we get up there, elk are gone. And I had to make a decision at that point on the last day. Like, look, man, we're close to 60 miles in for the week, and I've pushed as hard as I can possibly push. And I think it's a good idea if we go ahead and turn back now, because if we go any further, I don't know physically if I'm going to make it out. Like, it was that bad. So we make the decision to go ahead and head back to the truck, and we're done. We get about 200 yards from the truck, where we had driven the truck up on top of the hill and hiked from there. And you ever heard a tree fall in the woods there, Rob?
Man, actually, last year I was going into the woods, 4:00 in the morning. I was crossing this creek. It was me and my little brother, and there was kind of like a little windstorm going on. And dude, I heard this giant tree, which we ended up finding it later on the day. But it was a giant white oak, and it was so big that me and my little brother couldn't get our hands around it. Like, he could sit on one side, I saw on the other side, and it fell across the creek, and it was the loudest thing I've ever experienced while in the woods. Gunshots, obviously, but it was quite scary, because I was like, dude, I don't know what that was, but it was black, dark. It was black, dark. We have these 2 little lights cruising through the woods, and hear this thing fall. I was like, I didn't know what was going on. But it was quite an experience. So yeah, I did experience that once before.
Okay, the reason why I asked you that is because, so we're walking back, we're about 200 yards from the truck, and we hear what sounds to be a tree falling over, and it's loud enough to where we all stop. But so when a tree falls over in the woods, you hear like the cracking of the wood, and then you almost hear like where it's going to break off at. You almost hear it like explode, right? And then you hear the tree crashing through the woods. Well, imagine that sound, but without the actual tree falling. You get the cracking and then the explosion of wood, but no tree fall. And this went on for a little bit. We sat there and listened to it. I'm like, man, that is crazy. It's super loud. It's echoing through the woods. And then we all it was like a light bulb went off. We all kind of looked at each other like, that's a bear tearing a log apart. He's grubbing. He's tearing a log apart. And he can't be... Maybe he's within 100 yards of us, but he's straight uphill in the middle of these. We're on this little game trail, so we can't go. There's nothing over behind us except for straight down the mountain, and we're going east to west. And then he's up at north of us, on top of the ridge there. And I looked at my guide and I looked at Jesse, and Cody was with us. He's another guide that works over there. And first I looked at Cody and I said, Cody, I think that's a bear. And he goes, I'll bet you money that's a bear. And I was like, well, there's no way I'm getting up there. I mean, this is straight vertical. And I'm like, what are we going to do? He's like, I have no idea. You got a cow call with you? And he's like, well, yeah, we're elk hunting. I got a cow call. And I was like, blow on it. And he's like, why? I'm like, 'cause bears eat elk. Maybe he'll come to us. And they all kind of looked at me funny when I said that. See, but I'm from Arizona. You know, I do a lot of predator hunting out there, coyotes and stuff. And I've actually called in a mountain lion and killed a mountain lion with my bow by calling coyotes. And I figured, hey man, this is a last ditch effort. It's the last day. There's no way I'm getting up to him. What could it hurt, right? So he blows on the cow call, and the sound stops for a couple minutes. And then it goes back to making that sound again, tearing that log apart. I'm like, shit, didn't work. So by then, you know, Jesse's back with us, and he's like, you know, listening to it, and he's like, yeah, that's a bear. And I said, do either one of you guys by chance have a calf elk call? And Jesse's like, yeah, I got one. I said, do you know how to do a distress call with the calf? He's like, not very good, but we can try it. I'm like, do that. He got about 2 notes out of that thing, and all we hear is like a freight train coming down the mountain, coming straight at us. And we're like, oh crap, here he comes. So I come to full draw, and I can't see nothing. The only thing I can see is the space between me and where the oak brush starts and then goes uphill, right? Well, that's only about 3 or 4 yards away from us. That's all I can see. So I'm standing there like a statue at full draw waiting. And when this thing gets to about, I'm guessing, 30 to 40 yards away from us before we can actually start to see it come out of that brush, you can see oak brush just parting ways. I mean, it looks like the Red Sea parting, but we never saw the animal itself. So I'm standing there freaked out, I got nowhere to go, man. I got 2 guides with me that have been in the mountains. This is all they do is run up and down mountains, man. All they got to do is outrun me, and that's not hard to do. So I'm screwed. I can't go off the side of the mountain or I'm screwed, right? So my only chance when this thing comes out is to shoot him. So I'm at full draw and I'm waiting. And finally, he comes out of the bushes at 3 or 4 yards, and I'm talking, he's woofing the whole way. He came in to eat, and I hammered him. I shot him right in the face. Went in the cheek, out the back side of the cheek, into the shoulder, and then out the back of him. And it was pretty intense, to say the least. So I shot a charging bear that was coming in to eat at about 3 yards. With a bow.
Dude, that's crazy.
And we called it almost used a calf call, like a predator call, to call him to us. And it was like, I can't, and then the guys are looking at me when this all happened. I hit that bear and he takes off. And he changed his mind about eating real quick. Because I'm shooting them battle axes I build, and yeah, he didn't like that at all. And
yeah, dude, and your arrow weighs like what, 600 and something grains? Like that's a lot of force in right there.
It was right at 600 grains. It was actually a lot lighter than I wanted to go with, but I was actually shooting a prototype arrow that was sent to me from a company, that Ethics Archery. We are actually going to be working with these guys. It's a new arrow company, going to be actually debuting their website for purchase sometime this week or the beginning of next week. They're called Sirius Arrows, Sirius, kind of like Sirius Radio. If I'm not mistaken, hopefully I get this right, but I believe they're out of Ohio. They've actually created a full lineup, and they've got some more shafts that are coming. But right now they're going to start with their micro diameter 166 ID arrows. And every arrow you buy from these guys, from hunting to target, is going to come standard. Now I say standard, with the arrow built into the price with Ethics Archery components. Top-notch components comes with the arrow, no more having to go aftermarket. which is
that's
awesome.
Right there.
So,
yeah, that's awesome.
So they sent me some prototypes and basically some samples to take on this hunt and try them out. And I'm telling you, man, they did awesome. And they tuned really well for when I was tuning the bow and everything. It was great. Held up extremely well on that hard impact. I mean, because that's a lot of animal to go through. He's close to we didn't get an actual weight on this bear because I'll finish kind of how that went down. But he was somewhere between 250 and 300. He's guessed the game warden as well as Travis over there. The guide, they said he's right around a 5.5 year old bear. So he's a mature bear in his pride. And, so he's not a dink. He's not a giant, but he's definitely not a dink. And he's a good, respectable bear. And, it held up really well. Everything held up extremely well. Nothing failed, nothing bent, nothing broke. So that's cool. So kind of fast forward a little bit. We start trailing the blood trail, and this thing, a blind man could have followed this blood trail. This he's bleeding buckets, man. It's like a yellow brick road, but red, just all through the woods. And when you're in oak brush and real thick brush that you literally have to part the brush with your hands to walk through it, and you can see a blood trail clear as day, he's bleeding pretty good. But these bears, apparently, I found out, are extremely, extremely resilient. They don't like to die. Not easily, anyways. And we tracked this thing for ever. We finally get to a spot where it's like straight downhill and like deadfall everywhere. And everybody's kind of looking down, and then they looked at me, and looked down, and looked at me. You ain't going down there. There's no way you're going to get back out if you do. And I agreed. And by that time, Steve and his guide, Chris, had hiked up the hill because we called them on the radio and said, hey, we just shot a bear. So they come flying up the hill, and they get to me. And, we sit there for a little while, do some video stuff and about what just happened, and, decide that, we got to go after this bear, and I can't go down. So Steve is like, dude, I got you. We're here together, right? So he goes with the 3 guides, and they go down the hill, and they track this thing down. They get down to the bottom of it, and they find the bear. Now he's huddled off in a corner up against a ledge. He's kind of basically blocked in, and he ain't got no life left in him, but he's still alive, believe it or not. And everybody was kind of dumbfounded how this thing was still alive. And honestly, we gave him about 45 minutes before we started trailing him, and if we would have gave him a little bit longer, I think maybe he might have died sooner. So we may have pushed him a little bit. But obviously, as hunters, that's the last thing you want. You don't want something to live for very long after you shoot it. And in situations, it does happen. So Steve knocked an arrow at 24 yards, and he finished him off to make sure he died quick instead of just letting him sit there and suffer. So Steve finished him off with an arrow, and they went ahead and started caping him out and got the meat and everything back up to the truck where they met me. And the cool part about it is both Steve and I, we've developed a really good relationship, just not on a business side, but, we've become good friends. And both of us had this bucket list hunt of shooting a bear with a bow without the aid of dogs or anything without training them with dogs or anything like that. We wanted to hunt them with a bow. And in essence, both of us got a chance to do that because of how things went down. So we got to share in that. So we shared in the harvest as well. He took half the meat home and to Hawaii with him, and we got a lot of good video footage of it. But all in all, man, it turned out really, really well. We didn't get any elk on the ground, but that's elk hunting. And I got to shoot a bear at 3 yards with a bow. I mean, that's something I'm never going to forget. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's definitely something that would be hard to forget, the suspense
absolutely.
and all the feelings that you had going through your mind at that point in time where you see, like you said, the oak brush is separating and this bear is just coming at you and there it is, that's nerves of steel right there, man. That's being prepared.
I don't know if it's nerves of steel, stupidity, or what it or what it was, but I had nowhere else to go. My only chance was to hammer this thing in the face when he showed it. So I mean, I just kind of did what I had to do, and and don't get me wrong, I was scared. I mean, how do you not be scared of a potential 300-pound bear coming at you as fast as he can come? And he's coming to eat. It's kind of unnerving. And
yeah, dude, that's a terrifying situation to be in, and it's just awesome of the outcome that you got out of it. You guys went on an elk hunt. Where did you guys go in Colorado? What part?
Over near the Grand Mesas, over near Grand Junction.
Okay, cool. So you guys were out there. Yeah, you guys weren't successful on an elk, but you came out with kind of like a little bonus. An experience that was on your bucket list, and you kind of got it in a surprising time.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can't really ask for anything better than that. You know what I'm saying? And we called a game warden, and he actually came right out to the house. Thanks to that guy. We got him on. I can't remember his name right now, unfortunately, but we do have it on video, so we'll be getting those videos out. He came right out to the cabin once we got the bear cleaned up and got him back, and he came out that night, got him all checked in, and they took a little tooth. Colorado takes a tooth out of the bear. So in 6 months, I'll be able to look it up with the tag number, and they're going to tell us exactly how old the bear was, where the genealogy comes from. Because, the genealogy, they track it from mountain range to mountain range because they change. Bears tend to stay in the same area, but sometimes they do travel. So he'll be able to tell us, hey, this bear originated over here and traveled this way if that's the case. So we'll have all kinds of information on the bear in about 6 months. So that's going to be really cool. So as of right now, they're guessing him right around 5.5 years old. And we'll just have to see when the test results come in to find out how old he was. But cool thing is he's not your traditional black bear. He's actually like a chocolate brown. And so he was actually put on the paperwork as a color phase brown bear. Which is kind of cool because apparently, according to the game warden, he said this is extremely rare for a color phase black bear in that area. So that's kind of cool too.
That is kind of cool. Are you going to do anything with the pelt?
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to do something sort of a throw instead of a full rug. Obviously, I don't want it on the ground, people walking on it, stuff like that, and I don't want to be all spread out on the wall. So what I'm going to do is we're going to tan the hide, taxidermy the head with an open mouth, the claws, all that stuff, just like a bear rug would be. But instead of doing the felt, the padding, and all that stuff to actually put it on the wall or put it on the floor, we're going to leave it leather, supple leather, so you can still roll it up like a blanket. And I'm going to actually use that as a throw over the couch.
Dude, that'll be awesome.
That's the plan, to do it with that. But he's a pretty bear, real pretty bear.
So one of the things that I would be excited about in your situation would be the meat. That's something that I definitely put on one of my, like you said, a bucket list type thing. And I've heard both mixed reviews about bear meat, man. I've heard people say it's horrible, and I've heard people say it's amazing. So you'll have to let me know how it turns out.
I love bear meat. I love bear meat, man. I've actually had it on several occasions before. This is the first one that I've harvested. I will tell you this. So this comes up quite a bit when you start talking about multiple species of animals. You've always got the guys out there that are like, oh, it's horrible, don't cook it in the house, it's nasty. And then you got the guys that say they love it, right? Well, here's the thing. All game meat can be prepared where it's not gamey. They always say it's really gamey and really bad, right? That all comes down to the preparation from when you skin it and quarter it and how it's handled from the time it's killed to the time it goes in the freezer. It's all in how it's prepared and handled. If you don't handle it proper, you don't get the glands out of the meat before you grind it, because that bear had a gland, I'll bet you it was the size of a golf ball in each one of his hindquarters. It was huge. And if you don't get that out and you put that in the grind, the meat's going to be horrible. And it's kind of like javelina. You know, back in Arizona, we kill a lot of javelina, and some people are like, oh, you just throw those away. They're nasty. You turn them into dog food or whatever. They're phenomenal eating. They're great tasting animals, but they have glands on their backs that it makes them kind of greasy. The hair really greasy. Well, that's a scent gland. And if you touch that with your fingers, with your skin, during the gutting and skinning process, and then you touch the meat anywhere, and that oil gets anywhere on that meat, that's what makes them foul. It gives them this really nasty taste. So unless you know how to prepare an animal and take care of it from the field to the table, that can happen. So luckily enough, we were with some very knowledgeable people. Travis and the guys over there, Travis, Chris, and Jesse, and Cody, they all know what they're doing, and they handled it properly. The meat's phenomenal. I've already eaten a part of the backstrap on it, and it was delicious. So, man, it's all preparation, man.
Some people call me weird, though, man. A lot of times when I'm hunting, everyone gets caught up with antler size. And don't get me wrong, I like a deer or an elk or whatever it may be with large antlers. That's awesome. But, man, the meat and what comes out of it is one of my favorite parts of it, because that part of it lasts long after the hunt. My family will eat a lot of venison throughout the year or wild hog. And, it's every time we make something with it, it's just, I just get thrilled with it. I don't know why some people call me weird for it, but it's just something special to me.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, every time, when you put an animal in the freezer, every time you pull a piece of that meat out, it brings you back to, to remembering the hunt. You always think about it. And at least I do. Every time I cook a piece of meat, it could be once a week or twice a week or once a month. And when I pull that meat out and I'm going through the cooking and the preparation process, I can always play that hunt back in my mind. It always happens. And I don't do it consciously. It just happens. So absolutely, it lasts a lot longer. And I'm big on the meat too. I don't know how big this bear was yet. I measured him on a green score, just to kind of get an idea, because everybody always asks, well, how big was the bear? And you tell them, somewhere between 250 and 300. We didn't have a scale, so I'm not going to tell you he was, exactly this weight. Well, how big was his skull? I don't know. So I did a green score on him and got an idea from a taxidermist on like how much to deduct for skin and flesh, because it's supposed to be measured on the skull. And with the deductions and everything that they told me to do on a green score, he's about an 1/8 inch to a 1/4 inch just shy of Pope and Young.
Man, that's awesome, though. I mean, that's the perfect size, I would think. And is this your first bear you've harvested?
Yeah, this is the first bear I've ever harvested. It's the first bear I've ever had a tag for. Never even bought a tag for a bear before, but it's always been on my bucket list to kill one with a bow. And I got to do it from the ground with no bait, no dogs. Called him in. I mean, come on.
Yeah, dude, it doesn't get this story. This story is something that you will remember forever, and I'm sure you will tell it hundreds of thousands of times in the future to, your future friends or your future grandchildren or wherever it may be. It's just going to be one of those great, timeless stories.
And I can't wait for my nephew to finally see the pictures. Hopefully that'll happen this weekend. He's supposed to be going back to my parents' house this weekend in Arizona, and me and that little guy got a really good relationship. My niece too, and I bought my nephew. He's 8 years old. I got him a bow last year, and he's been shooting. And he shoots with me every time I go home, and then he does it when I'm gone too. And I got some videos of him, shooting, and it's kind of funny because I've never killed a bear. He doesn't, I've never been bear hunting. And it's not something that him and I have ever talked about, right? But if you ask him, when he's out there shooting his bow, hey man, what are you shooting your bow for? I'm practicing. Practicing for what? I'm going to go hunting. What are you going to hunt? And every time he'll look at you in the face, he stops what he's doing, and he's got this seriousness in his eyes and in the way he talks. He'll look at you and go, I want to shoot a bear. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what he saw. We've never talked about it, but he always says, I want to shoot a bear. I'm like, all right, little man, you know? And then he always finishes it up with this. And I said, oh yeah? Well, where are you going to shoot that bear? And every time, now I'm hoping to show him, I want him to be able to like look at pictures and show me, behind the shoulder right here, this is where you want to shoot an animal, right? No, he looks me in the face every time he goes, I'm going to shoot him right in the face. Because he's 8. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, exactly, man.
And I ended up shooting this bear in the face out of necessity, not by choice.
Dude, he's gonna be so excited to see everything, man.
Yeah, so the hide and everything, when I get it all done, I'm actually gonna be taking it back to Arizona. It's gonna go in his room. So,
dude, that's awesome. That's awesome. I'm
yeah.
glad you had such, your hunt, like you said, it has its ups and downs from when you first got there and you ended up breaking your toe, but you kind of pushed through it, and in the end, you ended up with a pretty amazing story.
Oh, absolutely. And again, the whole premise before we even started this hunt, and I want to stress it to people out there, when we get a chance to put some of the clips up and stuff like that. Now, I don't know if it's going to be a full episode on the show because we did not get the actual shot itself on camera. So you know how that goes with shows. If you don't get the actual arrow hitting the animal, then they don't really show it too much. But we're definitely going to do a big, I'm definitely going to get something put together, edited and whatnot to kind of show the story. And I will be posting that at some point somewhere. And when you guys get a chance to watch that, the whole point of this thing was just because you're not some Greek god of fitness does not mean that you don't belong on that mountain. You get out there, you push through it, you get through the bad parts. You always hear people talk about elk hunting. It's the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, right? And I understood it before, but now I really understand it because of what you have to go through while you're out there. And I stuck it out. I pushed through the pain. I pushed through everything. And in the last 200 yards of the 5-day hunt, this happened. So that just goes to show, push to the end. Don't give up, even though you want to, because I did. I wanted to give up I don't know how many times, man. But I pushed through it. And I was rewarded with a bucket list animal in a way that I wanted it to be done. With a bow, from the ground, without bait, without dogs. And that in itself is a huge reward. Not to mention knowing what I'd been through that week, whether you got an elk on the ground or not, man, it's super important that in itself is a win, So hopefully some of the folks listening to this that have ever considered going out west and doing something like that or any kind of hunting. I mean, if you're just sitting on the couch and you're like, hey, I'm out of shape, whatever, I have a hard time, but I want to learn to hunt, get out and do it. It's going to suck. It's going to hurt. It's going to be cold. It's going to be hot. You're going to sweat. You're going to freeze. It's going to be uncomfortable. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. And if you can use your mind to push through that, you can get out there, you can harvest animals, you can experience what hunting is all about and understand 100% when somebody says the highest of highs and lowest of lows. And once you experience that, man, it's a game changer. You'll be addicted to it for life.
So with this podcast in the books being one of my favorites so far, I do believe I'm going to have to listen to it and just, check it out because I just, it was a great experience sitting there talking to Haas about his elk hunt and everything that went on. So it's definitely going to be a podcast I'm listening to while I'm at work and telling myself, dang, dude, you sound so stupid. Because that happens every time. So with all this being said, guys, if you haven't already, give us a rating on YouTube, on iTunes, wherever you listen to this podcast. Go hit that like button, hit that share button, whatever you want to do. If you feel like you want to take a minute out of your day to go write me a review, go do that too, man. So I hope you guys have an awesome weekend. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, and I hope you guys will tune in next Saturday for the next episode of the Devoted Outdoorsman Podcast.